our content, our publishing, our blogs, our articles get found by more people, and more people are using AI. So today we're going to talk about AI. I'm going to kick it over to Caroline to start. Caroline Shelby, search engine optimization expert who has been around doing this work for years and has added, obviously, as I think we all have, information about how the stuff that we produce and the things that we do can influence things like large language models and LLMs. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Carolyn to introduce herself and jump off today. And then we're going to do, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. I will see all of those questions. We're going to have each of the presenters go, and then we're going to be tackling those questions as a group once we're done presenting. So Carolyn, you're up.
All right. Let's see. Can you see what I've got on the screen?
AI search and the law of evidence.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure that we were rocking and rolling in the right, cooking with the right gas. Okay. So my name is Carolyn Shelby. I'm going to talk to you today about AI search. And since you're all lawyers, I thought you would appreciate the legal tie-in. Basically, what I want to walk you through is a framework or a metaphor for understanding how the AIs are making decisions about what they're going to use and what they're not going to use, what they're going to trust. Because the ways in which we were building our websites to dominate the search engines and to drive the traffic to the sites, the logic is changing a little bit, and the goals are shifting. So let us get started. Let's see. There we go. So this is me. We already said that, Carolyn Shelby. I'm the Vice President of Strategy at Northside Metrics. It's a boutique consultancy. I do executive advisory. I've spent a great deal of time at Tribune Publishing. I worked on the newspapers. I worked on all of the newspapers. And then I was at Disney on loan to ESPN for a few years, where I ran all of ESPN's SEO. So I have a great deal of experience working with the large scale systems and how they interact with search. But today, what I want to talk to you about is how those AI systems that we're all going to have to deal with are now deciding which information they're going to trust. So for most of the history of search engines, the job was, we're going to rank the documents and we're going to show the users a list of links. And the users were then responsible for kind of eyeballing those options, clicking through to a few of them, and then making their own decision about which one they're going to ultimately, consummate the deal with. The problem that we're at now is the AIs have come in and they're taking all of this information, and rather than presenting a list of options, they're just giving the users an answer. So we no longer are fighting to get into that list. Now we're fighting to be the answer. And when the question is just, when there's just an answer provided, how are we going to get the AI to understand and trust our content so we ultimately are the answer that is provided? And it kind of changes it's changed the user experience. So now we're frequently asking ourselves, where's the traffic gone? Because most websites that I've seen, and one of my clients is an SEO plugin for WordPress. So we have a great deal of data that comes in for our users. Everyone pretty much across the board is down at least 30% in terms of raw traffic. You're not going to get the clicks that you were getting. Even if you're getting, even if you're doing paid traffic, the traffic is going to not come as frequently because people are not being incentivized to click through to those ads. There's no need for them to click through to those websites, because when they ask the search engine, what's Jimmy Joe's law office's phone number, it's just going to give it to them. There's no reason to go to your website. So you're not going to be able to use traffic as a proxy for success or for judging how well you're doing, because the traffic numbers are decoupling from the actual conversions and the calls that you're getting. You can probably still use phone calls as a reasonable metric, though. So why are you not advancing? What they're calling this is we're moving into a zero-click environment. So people are asking questions, they're getting the answer, they have no need to click. They're not going to click through to your website. Um, there is there have been some questions raised, well, do I even need a website anymore? Yes, you absolutely need a website, and that's kind of why I want to talk what I want to talk to you about for the rest of this presentation. The underlying knowledge that the LLMs and the AIs are presenting has to come from somewhere. We know that they're getting it from the expertise and the things that are published on the web. They're getting it now, though, from a number of places. They're looking at how many different places do they find your information? Is the information also on your website? Because your website is the source of authority. It's the source of truth. And does the information that exists on your website match all of the other information it finds elsewhere on the internet? So it's looking for corroboration, essentially. We're not striving and fighting now to get those clicks. We're trying to be the thing that is the answer. So the traffic that we were getting, it's always measured if someone is coming to your website. It doesn't really measure, did they read it? It doesn't measure what they thought about it. All it's telling you is they came and they looked at it. It's a reliable metric, so that's why we like to use it. Influence, though, is measuring whether your information is actually shaping the answer that someone received. It's a harder thing to measure, but there are tools that are emerging that are going to be helpful for that. In the AI environment, whether that influence is happening is going to happen before anyone clicks. So we're going to have to get the information directly from the LLMs. Google is getting a little bit better about showing people what queries you're showing up for and maybe what pages are being cited. Bing is actually doing a remarkable job with that. So if you don't have Bing Webmaster Tools, I would strongly suggest signing up for that. Ultimately, though, the lawyer whose analysis is shaping the answer is going to be the lawyer that the client calls. They're not going to get a list of options. They might get a couple options. They're not going to get the 10 options. They're not going to get the local pack. They're not going to get a map that shows which lawyer's office is closest to them. They're going to get some recommendations from the LLM based on the question that they asked, which means that you're going to have information on your website that is not just providing, hey, this is my name and this is my phone number. You're going to actually need to provide some information and some evidence that you know what you're talking about and you're good at what you do, because the LLMs now are taking in all of this information and using it to decide who they're going to recommend. One of the interesting things, though, is how are the AI systems making these judgments? Because it's different than the way the search engines were doing it. And I think you're going to find that it's very similar to what you as lawyers have been doing your entire careers. And that would be evaluating the evidence, basically. So as an attorney, you have to evaluate evidence and decide which testimony can be trusted. The AI systems are kind of trying to do the same thing. The only difference is that the courts use human reasoning to make those determinations, and the LLMs are using statistics and probabilistic algorithms. They're using math to do what the legal system uses human reasoning for. So probabilistic reasoning systems are just, it's odds, it's all numbers. They're reducing the views and the things that they read into numbers that they can match and numbers that they can work with, and then deciding who scores the highest, essentially. They're doing this in an attempt to construct a coherent narrative. When they have gaps in the data points that they have, they can't construct a coherent narrative, and they do what people do. They fill in the gaps. They hallucinate, right? A hallucination is when they've got a story that they're trying to tell, just like in your brain, you've got an event that you experienced, right? everyone remembers things slightly differently. And we know that the reason that we call multiple witnesses is to make sure that enough of the data points match up that we can probabilistically assume that they're correct, right? Very, very, very similar. This is my big legal parallel. So courts are relying on corroboration. This is why you have multiple witnesses. Consistent testimony is going to strengthen credibility. Consistent testimony in the AI world is making sure that the message that you have on your billboard matches the message that you have on your website, matches the message that you put on your TV commercials, matches roughly the message that you put out maybe in articles that you're guest writing or your Substack or anywhere else on the internet. Having consistent messaging and consistent phone numbers, consistent addresses, everything is consistent means all of these data points are going to match up, and the probability that that data is correct grows greatly. Anytime they're missing data points, they will start making things up. So it is your job to make sure that your website is not only accurate, but your website is structured in a way that is easy for the LLMs to get the content off of. If anything's buried in JavaScript, if it's buried in images, if it's not possible for the LLM to ingest the content that's on your page, doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, it's invisible and it doesn't count. So in the age of AI, brand mentions across multiple channels are incredibly important. Like I said before, consistent descriptions of people and organizations, very important. We need that corroboration. When you're in an interview, make sure that they're identifying you by name, by the name of your firm, by your specialty, by the town the region that you service. All of this repetition of your data points is going to reinforce that it's accurate and it's going to build authority. It's going to corroborate the evidence. Your public presence needs to reinforce your identity and your expertise. This also goes into why old school PR really matters again. Because public relations is creating these corroborating signals, because advertising is going to build recognizable names, all of that consistent messaging is reinforcing your credibility. The same narrative has to appear everywhere because it's going to increase certainty. If we can, and I'm sure this is the goal everywhere, get the users to ask for you by name or ask for you by a unique identifying image or something that is uniquely yours that helps the user remember you, you are almost guaranteeing that your name is going to come up when to a question like this one. I need to call a lawyer. Who's the lawyer that rides motorcycles? The ads are near Chicago. That's exactly how someone who needs to call someone is going to ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT, I was in a car accident. Who are those guys whose phone number is all the same number? ChatGPT will figure that out. The user has now been trained to give ChatGPT enough information to guarantee that ChatGPT picks the right guy and provides the right information. First-party sources are becoming dominant citations because the LLMs like source of truth. It used to be that you'd get third-party sources kind of dominating the 10 links because they had more inbound links. They had greater domain authority. The domain authority is mattering a lot less because the LLMs are doing very, very long tail searches. When someone asks a question, it's not picking out lawyer Chicago and then doing a search. It's picking out lawyer rides motorcycles, billboards near Chicago. That's a long tail search and it's going to be very specific. So persuading the users to include your name is going to change the outcome 100%. Where I think old school law firm SEO is falling short is that there was a really heavy reliance on technical tricks, especially aggressive schema implementations. And when I say aggressive, I mean, if you right click on a web page, you can view the source. I've seen source that was miles long because it had schema for every single one of the partners at the firm on the homepage. Like the homepage shouldn't be trying to rank for every single person. There are ways to do this without being quite so ham-fisted, but those tactics are not going to help with the LLMs. There's conflicting data, conflicting advice about schema, and I'll get to that in a second. The thing is, all a lot of the tactics that were heavily used are not going to be helpful to AI. So prioritizing the signaling to Google rather than publishing and hosting your own expertise is not going to help you as much as you would like. When it comes to schema, schema is absolutely helpful for helping the search engines interpret pages, but it's helpful for the search engines, not for the LLMs. What you need to do is, I'm not saying stop doing schema. I need you to understand what the schema is helpful for. The schema will get you into local packs. The schema will get you into the search engine results. When the LLMs are answering a question, this would be at inference time. Then they're going out and they're doing a search and they're getting a seed list of, 50, 100, 200 results, right? They can go through these results very, very, very quickly and decide which ones they're going to use as their citations and then give the user the answer. The schema is not going to help you when the LLM comes to your website to make sure it's got the right information. That's called grounding. The only time the schema will help you with the LLM is getting you into that initial seed list. So if you are relying on the LLMs to have certain information, you need to make sure that information is on the page and not buried in the schema. At inference time, they will not read the schema. The schema is read by the search engines, and the search engines will then decide if that gets you into the list. If it gets you into the list, then you have a shot at being cited, but only if the information that got you into the list is viewable on the page, like in text. So a lot of people have said, oh, but I know the LLMs can see this because they've repeated information that was only in the schema. When the schema gets you into a carousel, that's in the SERP. It's in the search engine results page. Then there's scrapers that come by and grab that content and they'll regurgitate that to the user. It's only been read by the LLMs because it made it into the search engine results page, and you cannot guarantee that it's always going to be there. You still need to make sure that you're repeating that information in text that the LLMs can read. All right. When people are telling you that you need to do GEO or you need to do AEO and it's special and it's going to cost all this extra money, I would disagree with that. Good GEO is really just good SEO. I have yet to hear anything about GEO that is different than good solid SEO. You need accessible HTML content. You need an information hierarchy in the way that you write things, because at inference time, the LLMs are not looking at the HTML underlying structure like the search engines used to. They're grabbing the code and they're parsing it into just text, and then they're reading it in the order that it appears. So it's taking contextual clues to create structure around the text that it sees. It doesn't see the H1s and the H3s. It doesn't see big text, little text, or colored text. It doesn't see that stuff. Making sure that you have strong internal linking is also very, very helpful, because that's going to help the search engines move around your site and make sure that the pages that need to be surfaced are surfaced. And then consistent authorship and topical authority, that is writing about the same thing, but different aspects of the same thing. Obviously, you're not going to write about the same thing on every page. That's diluting the vector, and that's an entirely different math problem. But making sure that you're writing consistently about your general topic, and that you're using the same authorship credentials. You're not, signing your name differently. Half your site doesn't have puppy pictures on it. You want to be consistent, but you do want to make sure that you have excellent content for them to grab onto. Why I believe that legal publishers have an advantage over some of the other industries that are going to be suffering soon. Your writing is generally structured and analytical already. You are already good at providing citations and sourcing your content. Your subject expertise is pretty explicit if you're even remotely good at your job. Your law blogs are going to be the original source of analysis for a lot of what the LLMs are advising. The LLMs are not out to steal your content. So please don't feel like you have to withhold information. They don't Stealing your content implies they care. They don't care, and they're not out to put you out of work. They just want to make sure that they're giving good information and making sure that the user's experience is excellent. So please don't hide your content. If you hide yourself or block yourself from the LLMs, you will be losing out on the opportunity to be recommended to searchers. You're going to be limiting your advertising options, basically. This graph I have is basically when you're writing your content, it's a quick little cheat sheet for how you can structure your page to make sure that you're chunking it. And I know that's a term that people use a lot when they talk about GEO. You're separating your answers into chunks, and you're making sure that they're layered in a way that's logical for the LLM to see. This is my topic. The H1 creates a topic boundary. H2, key concept A. H3 supports the H2. Another H3 maybe supports the H2. If you need a second H2, you jump that down. When you start mixing up your levels, the LLMs aren't going to realize that you're mixing up your levels quite like that because they're not looking at the titles. But that could be an entirely different and much longer presentation. The thing that we do want to remember is that now that the AI systems are favoring first-party source of truth, the aggregators are going to not have as much authority because they summarize, but they don't really have full reasoning. They're not going deep into the subject matter like your own website will. You, as an original publisher, are going to provide context and expertise that these aggregators just simply can't. And it gives you an opportunity to own your own narrative. If you've got some really unique specialties, or you've done something cool that no one else has done, or you had a really novel approach to solve a particular problem, this is where you get to talk about that. And that's going to help the LLM say, hey, user, you mentioned this, and there's this one person out there that I saw has something really similar. I think you should go talk to them. The LLMs are capable of matching the user's need to what you have, as long as you make it clear to the LLM what it is that you have. So ultimately, your website is no longer just a marketing tool. This really needs to be a place where your expertise is becoming part of the AI ecosystem. AIs like original analysis. They want your expertise, they want it to be consistent, and they want to know who's writing it. Having a blog author or generic staff account do the posting is a horrendous idea, and I strongly advise against it. Make sure that it knows who you are. If you can set up Wikidata and get yourself a knowledge graph, that's great. If you get yourself a Wikipedia article, also great. All of these things are great, and having these things repeated around the internet are going to reinforce who you are and what you're an expert at. The firms who have expertise that is the easiest for the machines to understand and ingest are the ones that are going to be cited in the AI answers. Your schema and your PPC are not going to overcome weak or poor content structure. So your strategy going forward: publish clear explanations of the legal issues that your clients face. Make sure that the LLMs know which questions to match you up with. Write in ways that the humans and the machines can understand. And that means don't lock everything up in the schema. You have to have things in text on the page for the LLMs to grab at inference time. Make sure that your expertise is appearing consistently across platforms. If you want to have a Substack, go for it. If you want to write on X or Blue Sky or any of the other social media places, great. Just make sure that there's tiebacks to your name, your website, and any other messaging that you want to have repeated by the AIs. Real quick, easy example here. When I asked the AI where I should take my tween when we go to Paris, AI said you should consider going to Disney Paris because it's a magical experience. Why would the LLM say it's a magical experience? Because Disney says everything is magical everywhere, all the time. Even when you call help desk, they say, have a magical day. Magical is Disney's word. That's why they say it. Be Disney. Repeat your word everywhere so that the LLMs repeat it to the users. They're going to reference sources associated with your expertise, and they're going to repeat whatever message it is that you say all the time. So make sure that your message is tight. All right, to recap, the role of websites is changing. They're not generating just traffic, because the traffic isn't going to really be a metric that we're going to be able to rely on anymore, or at least it's not going to be a strong indicator of how well you're performing. Impressions, maybe, but raw traffic, maybe not so much. People are going to come to your website when they're ready to make their, be converted, not necessarily when they're investigating. They're going to talk to ChatGPT. They're going to talk to the AI overviews while they're making those decisions. The knowledge sources, training signals, and citation anchors are going to come from your website. This is why your website is still important and why you need to make sure that it's structured in a way that the AI systems can grab that content and synthesize the answers. If your expertise is easiest to understand, you will be the one who's cited. Your takeaways. AI systems are not determining truth. They're just estimating probability. So increasing the odds that your information is accurate will make the AIs more confident in suggesting you as a source. Probability increases when multiple sources tell the same story. Publishing, reputation, and consistent expertise is the evidence that the AI systems rely on. So that was me. Next up, Eli is going to be talking about how we're going to structure our answers for AI. So picking the questions and the content that the users are going to need and how to optimize for follow-up questions. So I'm going to throw it over to Eli.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Stop sharing. There we go. I think I stopped sharing. I clicked exit.
Thank you. And I just, while Eli's getting his stuff set up here, would highly recommend, we're going to replay this out of anybody afterwards. Carolyn, great job. That was some, I think you need to send this. I know most of you are lawyers that are here with us today, but some of you are marketers. For the lawyers who aren't in the marketing department or CMO office, send this webinar to your CMO and say, hey, your team needs to check this out, because I know we've been for years the marketing department have been pushing towards what was data that was important to driving decisions on content and publishing and blogs and websites, and some of that's changing. And so I think that they need to be having a conversation about that as well. So awesome. Eli, you're
Okay.
up.
Can you guys see my screen?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Oh, well. All right.
Good for a
Try that
second.
again.
Let's say we can only see you.
Okay. Now you can see
There we
my
go.
screen. Good?
Good.
Okay. So my name's Eli Schwartz. I wrote a book called Product-Led SEO. And what my book argued, and it came out almost 5 years ago, is that instead of thinking about SEO from a keyword standpoint, SEO should be thought about from a user standpoint. And I know that everyone would always say that's something they did. They always thought about SEO from a user standpoint. But they thought about it from a user standpoint and the keywords that user would search. And really the ultimate target of most SEO was the search engine. Now, my book sold a lot of copies, and I got to consult with some amazing companies that did want to do product-led SEO, but many people did not want to do product-led SEO because they were rewarded by doing the kind of SEO that they just did some keyword research and they generated content. So I'm thrilled with what's happened with AI because it has forced everyone to actually care about the user and understand the conversations and understand the intent, because the AI has now replaced most content. So AI doesn't kill SEO. Like everything Carolyn said, this is a continuous process, as AEO is SEO and SEO is AEO and GEO, but it's a different flow. So rather than writing content, we're writing for a conversation, or writing for a user and thinking about the user. So the way to do that is you're optimizing for the follow-up. So the last 20 years of SEO and 20 plus years of SEO has really been about thinking about keywords. So what is the keyword this user is going to search? They're going to Google it and they're going to find my website. The most important metric for SEO is ranking. They find my website, they click on my website, SEO is done. Now it's the problem of the website. If no conversions happen, we blame someone else, but that is SEO. But that is not the way AI works. It is completely different, because now users get something else. They get they get an answer from the search engine. So whereas in the legal space, many websites might have focused on definitions or how-tos or stories, many of those things are now completely replaced by AI. So when users are going to an AI search engine, and during Q&A, when Jabez calls in everyone, we can find out how many of you are using AI yourselves. Most of us are probably doing that. We know how we do this. We know when we go to AI, if we want to know what an LLC is, you no longer need to click the first result. Or if you want to know what a lawsuit is, or how many members there are in a jury, or what the best state to incorporate in, all those deep questions, that's now in AI. There's no reason to write that blog post. So when users are going to an LLM, and it is going to expand. So right now, with this all started almost 3 years, or I think 3 years ago with ChatGPT. Now we've moved into AI overviews, which is on the top of search results. So even if you don't know about AI, you're seeing AI results, and it will likely move this spring into AI mode, where Google is going to take people into a complete AI experience and probably not give search results unless they feel like it, because they'll monetize that. So that already exists in AI mode. So when we think about how to target LLMs, you're targeting actual humans. You're no longer targeting words and trying to target intent based on the words that they're going to search. And when you do this, you want to think about these people as humans, not as representations of humans. They're actual humans with real problems. So when you're thinking about how to do SEO for this, you want to think about providing advice. You want to think about telling a story. So instead of saying, here's what a workplace discrimination lawsuit is, you want to tell your story of workplace discrimination lawsuit. And I've many friends who are lawyers, and you get them started about their cases, they don't stop. So do that. That's actually now good SEO. You want to write about your cases. You want to write about the specificity of the case, because that's what people are looking for. So if someone is looking for something very, very specific to an experience they've had an accident with an 18-wheeler truck that was driven by a grocery store, they're going to potentially put that into an LLM. If you have that story as a case, write that story. So instead of just writing what a personal injury lawsuit is, you're going deep into that. And that's what they're looking for in LLMs. So the LLM might reference it, but they want the story. There's a reason to click through. It's not that they just found a definition from the AI. There's this concept in the past where websites would focus on something called pillar pages. So these would be deep pages that would say everything possible about a certain topic. Within the legal space, there are many of them. The example I have over here is an LLC pillar page. So you have something around everything possible related to LLCs. What is it? What are the laws? What are the laws by state? That's no longer necessary and a complete waste of money, because that is absolutely replaced by the LLM itself or the AI overview. So if someone wants to search, where's the best place for me to incorporate? If you notice, LLMs actually are designed the best way for conversion. They always end with a question. So you say, where's the best place for me to incorporate? So the LLM might say, well, the best place that many companies choose is Delaware. But what kind of company are you? And that creates the conversation. So if you have this pillar page that talks about the LLC in every single state, the LLM has already beaten you, because that person has that conversation, and they've potentially even stolen that content and those ideas from you. So I wouldn't waste any money on content just for content's sake. And it actually makes this cheaper and better, because again, you're telling stories. You're telling them about the things that you know. So when you want to think about what are the things that you should target for LLMs, you don't need the keyword research, or in this case, LLM research. You have this data. If you are working in a law office, even if you're not a lawyer, you are around stories. You know the cases. If you are a lawyer, you've spent 3 years going to law school. You know the stories. You know the examples. You've read about them. If you are, even a marketing manager for a law office, you've gotten a job. You've done your research on what it's like to work at this law office. You know the stories. So get into these things. When you hear, say, a client ask the same question multiple times and there is no answer online, that sounds like something you might want to create. How should you create it? How should you create this? Well, it doesn't have to be 1,000 words. It has to be a story. So maybe this can be a video. Maybe this can be a slide deck. Maybe there should be audio. It can be any of that, but it's what the user is looking for. It will be referenced by the LLM, but they're going to come to you because they want that deeper emotional story. When you think about how to set this up, so Many times companies, and in this case, law offices, might not want to build content that doesn't seem conversion oriented. But you should, because once a user has come to your website, you want to bring them through that entire journey. You can't hit them right away with, I'm the best lawyer, hire me. You want to give them, again, stories. This is who I've worked with, and flow that all the way through. So as an LLM, and Carolyn talked about this a lot, so as an LLM is trying to understand who you are, it builds these pieces together. So if you talk a lot about discrimination lawsuits and you have examples of cases that you've won, and you say where you're located, now if someone does that search, the LLM will do that thinking to say now you're the best lawyer for it. So you can't just have a page saying I'm the best lawyer. You're building that story, that the same narrative that would sell a user on why they should come to you, that's the narrative that will sell an LLM on why they should recommend you. So really what we're thinking about is a holistic client, not just keywords. I personally feel that AEO is a brand metric. And right now, SEO teams are the ones that are thinking about how to show up in an LLM. But the best way to show up in an LLM is to be the recommended brand. So you very rarely are going to go to any LLM and say, let's say, what's the best shoe for me to buy, and have the LLM recommend some sort of knockoff you've never heard of. The reason they're recommending Nike and Adidas and OnCloud and all the potential brands that they'll recommend is because those are brands. Those have built brand signals elsewhere. So as a law office, when you want to think about how you should be recommended in an LLM, it's not just about I've built great content, I have a good looking website, I have a picture of everyone in my firm wearing a tie and well dressed. It's really about what are the places that you're referenced. Do law schools reference you as a graduate? Does a chamber of commerce recognize you as a member? Does the media recognize you as an authority? Are you quoted? That's how you build that brand. So SEO is not just about the way it used to be, which is I've written content, I've used the right words, I've bought links, so now I'm sort of authoritative. AI is artificial intelligence. They are thinking. So the same way a human would say, wow, that's a really, really good lawyer. They seem very knowledgeable. This seems like someone that will understand my needs and help me achieve my goals. You want to make sure that all of those signals exist. What's the best, in this case, citation or link to get? We don't know. It could be, if you're a local lawyer, it could be a local newspaper. If you're a national lawyer, maybe it's Wikipedia. It's hard to know. So you want to go after all these things that make you appear to be a bigger brand. So you don't really need to overhaul your website in order to do this. You want to understand your customer journey. So what is the most common client that's coming in? You may say you specialize in all personal injury, but if there's a specific story and a specific narrative that you seem to do really, really well at, build that narrative and you see if that you start getting favored in LLMs and you start getting more clients that come in. This will be reinforcing, rather you're not inventing something new, it'll reinforce something you're already doing. So the way to think about LLMs is that these are real humans, and the same way a real human might have, 30 years ago gone to the yellow pages and called every law office until someone resonated. That's what's happening. So you want to take that concept of now you're resonating when you're being interviewed. So the LLM is quote unquote interviewing you. You're showing up, you're appearing the best you can be. Make that show up on your website, make that show up in your marketing, and it'll show up in the LLM. So to wrap up, this is not about SEO being applied to AI. This is an entirely new paradigm. We've lost this entire concept of focusing on keywords and ranking on content. We're now focusing on users. We're focusing on clients. The LLMs are your way of directing people towards your business. So the same way, if you had a personal assistant, your personal assistant would do whatever you say. Go find me the best lawyer. This is what I want to ask you all the questions. This is what I want to pay. This is the kind of lawyer I want. So LLMs become each person's personal assistant. So you want to make sure you're appearing the best way possible for that personal assistant. And the way you're going to do that is by doing holistic marketing and not just finding a new hack and a new loophole to succeed. This is me. Find me on LinkedIn and subscribe to my newsletter at productledseo.com, and look forward to all the questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Eli. Fantastic. And so much of what you both talk about are things that we preach constantly, which is, be the expert, be the lawyer, write the stories, cite other cases, make sure that you're internally making a nice roadmap for people to understand. And now, thankfully, the AI has kind of forced us all into that direction. I was just thinking about, I was on a phone 2 nights ago with a medium-sized publishing company. I don't know, they probably do about 20, 30 million a year in revenue, and they're getting sued by a massive shoe company that is not Nike for intellectual property things issue. And they went to ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT a bunch of questions. And then we got on the phone and they were like, I don't know what kind of lawyer I need. And we were just chatting about it because, I've known them for a long time. And I was just, to me, it doesn't surprise me, but like everyone is going to AI to find information, from just your neighbor to the executive at a Fortune 500 company, right? So it has become something that we're all using. And so it is even more prevalent for lawyers to make sure that their expertise is being highlighted. And that brings up our first question here, which got asked, and I think it's an important one, is I've got things I've done, right? Maybe I've written books, or I've authored a lot of books on my practice area, and I'm been recognized by my state bar, and I've gotten all these things that I have accolades and awards and effort and things I've done to build authority, if you will. How do I help the LLM understand that authority? Like, is there anything I can do to help with all this stuff that I've done so the LLM can see it? Yes, Carolyn.
So especially if you've published books, you have an ISBN number. There is a thing called Wikidata, and it's sort of like Wikipedia. They're tied together, but it is a place where you can define who you are, what you've done. You can provide references and links to those references to prove that you've done all these neat things. And the thing that it feeds is the knowledge graph, and the knowledge graph feeds AI overviews. I've had great success updating. Someone created the Wikidata on me many, many, many years ago. It still said I was a web developer. I haven't been a web developer since like 1997. So I went in and I said, oh, all of this is out of date. Here, let me provide you with all of this cool new stuff that I've done. And not only did it, within 24 hours, change what AI Overviews was saying about me, it then started repeating answers or commentary and language that was in a YouTube video where I was interviewed that I provided as a reference. And now it was like legendary SEOs of something or other. And then start referring to me as legendary. I'm like, this is awesome. I need to make some more YouTube videos and have it call me a supermodel now. So I would go and I would edit that and make sure that you're providing and citing all of the books that you've written, all of the jobs that you've had. It lets you do all of those things, especially if it's got a database or a means of looking it up and verifying it, which is what your ISBN number is. The Bar Association probably has similar things. That you have a lot of data that can be proved, which means it's acceptable to put in that Wikidata. It's going to be life-changing.
Yeah, because like your ISBN access is kind of an author record for you and that piece of content, that book that you've written, and that is a very strong signal to help with the authority side of the fence. And I would say, go to your bar association, and if you've been recognized by them, or you were the former president, or you've been involved, make sure that where they talk about you on the bar association website, that information is accurate, current, and up to date. And it's okay to reach out to them and say, hey, can we polish this up a little bit? I've had some changes over the years. Here's some extra stuff that I've done. And I always say make it frictionless. So write it up for them, and don't make them do all the work. Say, hey, here's information that would be useful. You mentioned that they show the Wikidata. Do they just Google that? Where do they go? Where is that
I think it's
live?
wikidata.org. You need to have an account. You need to have an account within that system to make edits, but it's
Okay.
it's free to make an account. If you do something crazy, someone might come and revert your changes. There are
Yep.
people it's like Wikipedia, where people will go through and they'll check to make sure nothing's too crazy. But if it's defensible and true, there's no rule that you can't fix your own entry. So
Sure. Absolutely. Kenneth, who'd asked that question, had a follow-up, which was they compiled all that for their website schema. Does that count?
Well, I just want to ask a clarifying question here. Um, Kenneth and Jabez, sorry, Carolyn and Jabez, you're assuming that that Kenneth doesn't show up the way he wants to. Kenneth, can you like clarify? Like, I'd be surprised actually, given what you that you already have these books and you already have these certifications, and you're already recognized, if you're not already showing up the way you want to. And wherever the gaps are, then I'd try to fill in those gaps by like where it's coming up. Like you may I don't know what you want to show up for, but I think that's what it comes down to. It's like for me, I know Carolyn, like if you want to search like best SEO in the Midwest, like that's Carolyn. So you're going to search that. And if she doesn't show up, she'll find that like someone else is showing up, but like they just didn't realize Chicago's in the Midwest. So that would be the correction that she would approach. So you want to find out what the gap is. So like if you're in a specific state and you're not showing up in that specific state, you'd want to see where they're drawing from. And I think that's the thing about LLMs. It's really this perception. So wherever they have a misconception, you correct that misconception. But yeah, exactly like Carolyn said, fill in all those gaps. Like make sure like you have a website, your ISBN is all, has all your information and all that. But again, I'd be surprised if you weren't mostly showing up the way you want to, because the LLMs actually are really good, except for the weird hallucinations when you ask them to go further. But on these kinds of things, they're pretty good.
It happens. Kenneth, shoot me an email, just jabez@lexblog.com. I saw your next follow-up kind of thought there. I've got some thoughts. I want to ask you some deeper questions on that. For the sake of time, I want to make sure that I can get to a couple other questions. Somebody asked, what is the best tool for generating questions that quote real people would ask in a topic area? Or are there tools that we could use to say, how would a normal non-lawyer person maybe ask this question?
Do you want to handle that one, Eli?
Yes, I'm sure you have great ones. There are a couple tools like so SEMrush and Ahrefs both have like ways of just giving questions, which they're scraping Google. I think Google's the best source because Google's normalizing off of billions of searches. So it's people also ask within search and then suggested queries. So SEMrush, Ahrefs both have tools. There's also one called Answer the Public that's helpful. So you can try those tools. There's another one called keywordtool.io. These give you like a certain amount of free searches per day. You can also go into any LLM and just say, what are the questions people also ask? And then my favorite one is with permission, record your client conversations and they'll ask the questions and then get the notes of that. And you'll see things that show up more like something like, how can I trust you? Or how much does it cost? How long will this take? Those are going to be common questions. They probably show up in a lot of conversations. And those are ideas you'll want to do. Now I want to learn from Carolyn.
No, I was going to say you could use Google Trends too, trends.google.com. So that will show you topics and how often they're searched. And there are some sections as you dive into certain topics, it'll tell you what the specific queries are. And the specific queries are getting very long tail. So the longer the query that you look at, the more it's going to resemble an actual question. And I think that'll give you some ideas about the language that people are using, even if it's just showing you some variants of the words. In newspaper world, I would always say, we don't make a headline about a papal visit. We make a headline about the Pope visiting because nobody except the Pope calls it a papal visit. So using the language that, the people are going to use is very important to match up that query intent. But yeah, I would absolutely just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, pretend you're a 50-year-old guy who lives in Peoria and your job is driving a semi. How would you ask this question? It'll come up with something. I don't know how accurate it'll be, but it will probably directionally be pretty decent.
Give you a good start. There was on the recording of the conversations with clients with approval and when allowed. What I think is interesting too is that sometimes we hear questions, but we translate that question in our brain into our expert speak and then answer the question. And so we didn't hear the words they used. We translate the words they use into how to help us answer that question. So if you record it and go back and listen, you will be shocked at the way that you hear the question asked will be different probably than the way you remember the question being asked. which I think is just an interesting way that we kind of process it when we're in conversations, discovery conversations. This next question is a two-parter because it kind of got two parts got asked by two different people. One is kind of how do you integrate your website, your LinkedIn presence, Substack, whatever, LinkedIn, Lex blog, or law firm blog, like how do you ecosystem-wise integrate these things? And then as a slight follow-up to that, are the LLMs assessing LinkedIn posts specifically? Do we know that?
When it comes to LinkedIn posts, they have to be able to find them. So if it's a thing that if it's a post that shows up in a SERP, in a search engine ranking page, then they are capable of grabbing that. So if the search that they do is for your name and some specialty that is yours, and your LinkedIn post shows up in that seed list of search engine results, then they will look at it. But they're not training on LinkedIn posts. So they're two different steps there. As far as integration, make sure that these things are interlinked. You'll want also there's schema that you can use that called same as. So your Substack is same as your blog. It doesn't mean it's identical. It just means it's still you. And then again, I'm going to go with the Wikidata because you can list all of those things as being yours with the URLs as the references, and that will tell the knowledge graph that all of these places are places that you personally write, you being defined by your Wikidata number so that they know that's definitely you that they're talking about.
Would you take your LinkedIn posts and copy paste onto your website under a section of LinkedIn posts?
I don't call well, personally, I do something similar to that, but I don't call them LinkedIn posts. I'll add it to like the blog and I'll say, this is I expanded on the topic that I posted about it on LinkedIn on such and such a date, and then I link over to that LinkedIn post, and then I sort of rephrase it and maybe write a more expansive discussion of whatever that thought was.
Nice. Eli, any thoughts on ecosystem integration?
Yeah, so two parts. One is everything that exists on the web do feed into brand perception. So LinkedIn, Reddit, YouTube, Twitter, everything. Now, I did consult for LinkedIn, and they have a problem with LinkedIn. All the LinkedIn posts they want to be indexed. So I wouldn't rely on LinkedIn as a source for LLM. So if there's something good that you're doing, just like Jabez said, put it somewhere else. But will it help you? Yeah, it's great. You should be using LinkedIn anyways. If you get some incremental value from it also helping you in LLMs, that's great. But if you want to make sure it helps you in LLMs, put it somewhere else that is definitely crawled. The challenge with LinkedIn and the challenge I worked on with them is they have billions of posts. If you go through all the years and all the content, a lot of it is spam too. So like that's a problem for LinkedIn. That's a problem for LLMs. That's a problem for Google. So that's why if you do, and it also depends on your own personal authority on LinkedIn. So how many, let's call it followers you have, because that creates more points where you'll get crawled. If you don't have that many followers, you may not have as much authority. So not all your content will even end up being indexed. So I would not rely on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is for LinkedIn, YouTube's for YouTube, Reddit's for Reddit, but there is incremental value. So use these platforms and whatever you get for LLMs, you get.
Actually, real quick, I don't know if you've noticed this, but Gemini in particular, and Gemini is what feeds AI overviews, they're pushing YouTube videos incredibly hard because that's where they can still make money. So when you're having conversations with Gemini, it'll talk to you about whatever it is and say, "Oh, and by the way, you might want to watch this video that's about that topic." And that video might not even be by the person that you were talking about or about the exact topic, but it's close enough because they want to get you over there and show you those ads so they can keep making money. So I would say that if you don't have videos, you might want to consider doing, you know, just like this talking head video and read your blog post, read your LinkedIn post into it or discuss it, and then post that to a YouTube channel because Gemini, Google, has access to the transcript. So it's getting all of that content and it's matching it up. And if it's discussing your subject matter and you've got a video about it, even if they're talking about some other lawyer or some other aspect, if you're close enough and you're the only video, they're going to throw you in there too. if only to get the money for themselves, but it's giving you exposure.
And I think that we see pendulum swings in production value over time. So the beginning of YouTube, production value didn't matter at all. Then all of a sudden production value went really crazy. Now we're seeing a swing back again to just kind of more, I don't know if I call it authentic content, but less produced, having to be less polished. And I just want to give you permission as a lawyer to not have to feel like the content production level needs to be insane. It's about the
If it's too
content.
polished, people think it's AI. So
Well,
now
totally.
making human mistakes looks less AI.
Yeah, back to human. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
100%.
All right. I want to keep us on time here and respect everybody's day. Thank you both so much for joining us today. That was a really fantastic conversation. And I'm really excited to get this out there and share it. And thank you for those that asked questions. Sorry, we weren't able to get to all the questions online. I saw a couple online from the streaming, so I'll follow up with you separately on this. But Carolyn, Eli, thank you very much. Eli, stay safe. Carolyn, good luck with your travels. I see you've been all over the world lately. And I just want to thank all of our attendees who joined us for coming here today and spending some time with us in your afternoon to talk a little bit about AI and how our blogs get out there to the world. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Are we done?
I think so.
Okay.
There we go. Just stopped recording. I think everybody's still here though. Hi, we got 17 people left here.
All right.
Hold on. That's okay.
we
Recording
go.
stopped. All right. It looks like I'm gonna have to mute that out. Carolyn, thank you for coming. I do
All
really
right,
appreciate the
thank
time
you.
and love the bookcase.
Oh, thanks. All right. Yeah. Okay. Let me know if you need anything else.
Awesome.